Pick up the pace, you're embarrassing me. My father's voice boomed across the track field as I struggled to complete another lap. My chest felt like it was being crushed in a vice, each breath more painful than the last. At 16, I should have been able to handle this, at least according to him. Dad, I gasped, slowing down. I can't. My chest. Excuses. He marched over, his former military stance intimidating as ever. Madison, you're just out of shape. No daughter of mine will be this weak. Another lap. I tried to explain the stabbing pain, the dizziness, the way my heart seemed to flutter irregularly. But he wouldn't listen. He never did. These mandatory training sessions had been his solution to what he called my attention-seeking behavior, ever since I first complained about chest pain during volleyball practice last year. My name is Madison Chen, and my father, James Chen, was determined to turn me into the athlete he never had the chance to become. His own military career had been cut short by an injury, and somehow I became his second chance. The fact that I could barely complete a lap without feeling like I was dying meant nothing to him. I said move. He grabbed my arm, practically dragging me forward. That's when everything went black. I woke up to the sound of beeping machines and my mother's worried face. The emergency room's harsh lighting made her look older, more tired than usual. She was arguing with my father in hushed tones. James, this is the third time this month. She needs to see a specialist. She needs discipline, Sarah. The school nurse already checked her out last time. There's nothing wrong with her. I wanted to scream, to tell them about the nights I lay awake feeling my heart race for no reason, about the dizzy spells that kept getting worse. But I'd learned that speaking up only made things worse. My father would just add more training sessions, pushing me harder to build endurance. Dr. Torres, the ER physician, interrupted their argument. Mr. and Mrs. Chen, we need to run some tests. Madison's EKG shows some concerning irregularities. My father scoffed. She's just dehydrated. I make sure she drinks water during training. Dr. Torres' expression hardened. Mr. Chen, your daughter's heart rhythm is seriously abnormal. This goes beyond dehydration. I'm calling in Dr. Andrea Park, our cardiologist. For the first time, I saw uncertainty flicker across my father's face. Cardiologist? That's ridiculous. She's 16. Age doesn't make her immune to heart conditions, Dr. Torres replied firmly. And given her symptoms and these readings, I'm admitting her for observation. The next 24 hours were a blur of tests, blood draws, echocardiograms, stress tests, which they stopped quickly when my heart rate became dangerously erratic. Through it all, my father paced the hospital room, alternating between dismissing the whole thing as unnecessary and criticizing me for not pushing through like he had with his injury. Dr. Park arrived the next morning, her kind face serious as she reviewed my results. Madison, how long have you been experiencing these symptoms? About a year, I admitted, avoiding my father's glare. It started during volleyball, but... A year? My mother's voice cracked. Why didn't you tell us? I did, I whispered. Dad said I was just out of shape. Dr. Park's expression darkened. Mr. Chen, your daughter has a congenital heart condition that's been severely aggravated by intense physical activity. These training sessions you've been conducting, they could have killed her. The color drained from my father's face. That's impossible. She was fine until last year. She wasn't fine, Dr. Park interrupted, pulling up my test results on her tablet. This condition has been present since birth, and given the genetic nature of it, one of her parents would have to be a carrier. The room went silent. My mother turned to my father, realization dawning on her face. James, is there something you haven't told us? His military posture crumbled as he sank into the chair beside my bed. For the first time in my life, I saw fear in my father's eyes. My brother, he whispered. He had the same symptoms. We were training for military enrollment together. He collapsed during a run, but I left him behind. Told him he was weak. He died 2 days later. Dr. Park nodded grimly. This condition runs in families, Mr. Chen. Your brother's death wasn't from weakness. And your daughter isn't weak either. She's been fighting for her life while you pushed her beyond her limits. The monitor beside my bed beeped steadily, marking the seconds of heavy silence that followed. My father's face had gone from pale to ashen, the weight of his actions finally sinking in. Madison, he started, his voice breaking, but Dr. Park wasn't finished. We're transferring her to the cardiac unit, she announced. And Mr. Chen, I'm documenting everything. These training sessions end now. As they wheeled me out of the room, I caught one last glimpse of my father. The man who had always stood so tall, so certain of his authority, looked completely shattered. But for the first time in years, I could breathe a little easier, knowing that the truth was finally coming out. What I didn't know then was that Dr. Park's report would uncover much more than just my heart condition. My father's carefully constructed world was about to crumble, and my life was going to change in ways none of us could have predicted. The cardiac unit was different from the regular hospital rooms. Everything was monitored, every slight change in my heart rhythm noted and recorded. Dr. Park had started me on medication to help regulate my heartbeat, but the real treatment would be more complicated. Your condition requires specialized care, she explained during morning rounds, her voice firm as my father tried to interrupt. We're looking at possible surgical intervention, but first, we need to understand the full scope of the damage. The damage, not just to my heart, but to my life. Years of forced training, of being called weak and lazy, of pushing through pain that should have been a warning sign. The psychological evaluation Dr. Park ordered revealed what she called significant emotional trauma. My mother barely left my side, her guilt evident in every worried glance. I should have done something sooner, she whispered one evening, thinking I was asleep. I knew something was wrong, but your father was so insistent. The real breakthrough came 3 days into my hospital stay. Dr. Park arrived with a thick file and a grim expression. I've obtained your uncle's medical records, she announced, looking directly at my father. The same condition, the same symptoms, and the same dismissal of warning signs. But there's more. My father, who had been unusually quiet since his confession, looked up sharply. More? Your military medical records, Dr. Park continued. You were diagnosed with a mild form of the same condition during your service. You knew you were a carrier. You knew the risks. The silence in the room was deafening. My mother stood up so quickly her chair scraped against the floor. You knew. Her voice trembled with rage. All this time, you knew this could happen to our daughter. I thought I could make her stronger. My father's voice was barely audible. If I could overcome it, push through it. You didn't overcome anything, Dr. Park cut in. You were medically discharged because of your heart condition. It's right here in your records. You've been lying about that injury story for years. I watched as my father's carefully constructed facade crumbled completely. Every story he told about his military career, every time he pushed me to be stronger, it was all based on lies. The mandatory training sessions stop immediately, Dr. Park declared. I'm reporting this as medical neglect. Child services will be involved. My father stood up, his military bearing failing him. You can't. I'm her father. A father who knowingly endangered his child's life. Dr. Park's voice was ice. Madison could have died, just like your brother. Does that mean nothing to you? He left the room without another word. My mother stayed, holding my hand as Dr. Park explained the treatment plan. Surgery would be necessary to repair some of the damage, followed by months of careful rehabilitation. The next few days brought more changes. Child Services interviewed me, their questions gentle but probing. How long had the training sessions been going on? Did I ever tell anyone about my symptoms? Did my father force me to continue even when I was in pain? My mother filed for emergency custody, her hands shaking as she signed the papers. I'm so sorry, Madison, she kept saying. I should have protected you. The worst part wasn't the medical procedures or the uncertainty about my future. It was remembering all the times I believed I was just weak, just not trying hard enough. Dr. Park arranged for me to speak with a therapist, Dr. Lauren, who specialized in cases like mine. Your father's actions were about his own issues, Dr. Lauren explained during our first session. None of this was your fault. A week after my admission, my mother arrived with news. Your father's been served with a court order, she said quietly. He's not allowed to contact you without supervision. And she hesitated. They're investigating his military pension. The discharge wasn't honorable like he claimed. I should have felt satisfied seeing my father's lies finally catch up with him. Instead, I felt a complicated mix of relief and sadness. The man who had dominated every aspect of my life with his demands for perfection had been living a lie all along. Dr. Park visited later that day with my latest test results. The medication is helping, she said, showing me the improved readings. But Madison, I want you to understand something. You're not weak. You've been incredibly strong, fighting against a serious condition while under immense pressure. That strength is what kept you alive." As she left, I caught my reflection in the window. The scared, uncertain girl who used to dread her father's training sessions was starting to fade. In her place, I saw someone who had survived, who had truth on her side, and who was finally getting the help she needed. But my father's story wasn't over. What happened next would shake our family to its core, revealing secrets that had been buried for decades. 2 weeks into my hospital stay, an unexpected visitor arrived. A man in a military uniform, his face bearing a striking resemblance to my father's, stood in my doorway. My mother gasped. "Colonel Marcus Chen," he introduced himself. "Your father's commanding officer, and your uncle's best friend. The uncle who had died. The one my father had allegedly left behind. Your father never told you about me, did he?" Colonel Marcus sat down, his expression grave. "I've been searching for answers about David's death for 20 years. When Dr. Park filed her report, it triggered several flags in our system." My mother gripped my hand as Colonel Marcus pulled out a weathered folder. "Your father didn't just abandon David that day. He deliberately withheld medical information that could have saved him." The truth, as it turned out, was far darker than we'd imagined. My father and his brother David had both inherited the heart condition, but my father's case was milder. When they joined the military together, my father had hidden his diagnosis, fearing it would prevent his advancement. "David trusted your father," Colonel Marcus continued. "When he started showing symptoms, your father convinced him to keep quiet, to push through it. He wanted to prove that their family's weakness could be overcome." The parallel to my situation was chilling. History had nearly repeated itself, with me in David's role. "After David's death, your father created a false narrative," Colonel Marcus explained. "He claimed an injury forced his retirement, but in reality, we discovered his condition during an investigation into David's death. He was given a choice: accept a medical discharge or face charges." My mother's face had turned to stone. "He built our entire life on lies." "The investigation was never officially closed," Colonel Marcus added. "With these new developments, with what happened to Madison, we're reopening the case." That afternoon, my father arrived for what was supposed to be a supervised visit. Instead, he found Colonel Marcus waiting with 2 military police officers. "James Chen," Colonel Marcus stood, his voice carrying the weight of 2 decades of justice delayed. "You're being charged with negligent homicide in the death of David Chen, and with the subsequent cover-up of medical evidence." I'd never seen my father look so small. The military bearing he'd worn like armor all these years crumbled as the officers read him his rights. "I was protecting our family's reputation," he tried to explain, his voice breaking. "David was weak. I had to be strong." "No, Dad," I spoke up, my voice stronger than I'd ever heard it. "You were the weak one. Too weak to accept the truth, too weak to protect your brother, too weak to be a real father." They led him away in handcuffs, the last vestiges of his carefully constructed lies falling away. My mother waited until he was gone before breaking down in tears. Dr. Park arrived moments later, having witnessed everything. "Madison, are you okay?" I touched the heart monitor leads on my chest, thinking about Uncle David, about the strength it takes to face the truth. "I'm better than okay. I'm free." The following weeks brought rapid changes. My father pleaded guilty to all charges, accepting a military prison sentence. My mother filed for divorce, and we began planning a new life, one built on honesty rather than fear. My surgery was scheduled, with Dr. Park confident about the outcome. "Your heart is stronger than anyone gave it credit for," she said during pre-op preparations. "Just like you." Colonel Marcus became a regular visitor, sharing stories about Uncle David, not as the weak person my father had described, but as a brave, kind man who dreamed of becoming a doctor. "He would have been proud of you," he told me. "You did what he couldn't. You survived and exposed the truth." 3 months after my collapse on the track field, I stood in front of a mirror in my hospital room, preparing for discharge. The girl who stared back wasn't the same one who had tried desperately to earn her father's approval through pain and suffering. "Ready to go home?" my mother asked, holding my discharge papers. "Ready for a new beginning," I replied. Dr. Park had cleared me for light activities, with proper medication and monitoring. No more forced training sessions, no more pushing through pain. Instead, I would learn to listen to my body, to understand its signals, to be strong in ways my father never understood. As we left the hospital, I carried with me not just medical instructions, but life lessons earned at a heavy price. Sometimes the greatest strength lies not in pushing through pain, but in having the courage to speak up, to seek help, to expose lies that hurt not just ourselves but others. My father's lies had cost him everything: his freedom, his family, his carefully constructed facade of strength. But from those lies, I had found my truth. I was Madison Chen, survivor, truth teller, and stronger than anyone had ever known. And that was just the beginning of my story.